I just want to welcome everybody to our meetup today. This month we decided, hey, it's a new year. We might as well jump in and do an Ask Me Everything or Ask Me Anything and Everything for this month. And as always, if you have questions, that's the whole point of this meeting is we have experts here in the community that can help, both from Liquibase, the company internally, and then we have plenty of people here that are super helpful that are just part of our community. But Kevin, I'll go ahead and let you talk a little bit more about the agenda and kick things off.
Sure. We'll do a little bit of housekeeping up front, but then we will jump into your questions. And so any things that you've been trying to figure out or things that you want to do or things that you think Liquibase should be, that we'd love to hear all of that. And then after that, we'll do a quick community update of things that have gone on in the past month and go from there. All right, so why are we here? We're here for a few key reasons. One, to be able to meet each other face to face, which it's nice we can do that internationally via Zoom these days. Certainly to make sure that you have the opportunity to learn something about Liquibase, to ask us questions and share your problems, and then really for all of us to share our insights with each other. A lot of times people in the community have deeper insights into specific use cases or ways that they use Liquibase that's really helpful to share with each other. So we appreciate that when you can do that. Just a quick note, we're here. This is a place to share your questions, ideas, and experiences. We want to give everybody a chance to do that. So please be respectful of everyone and give each other opportunities to participate. All right. So virtual introductions. This has worked out really well in the past, so we're going to keep doing this. Instead of going around the room to do introductions, we're asking if everybody could, if you could turn your camera on so we can all see each other, that would be great. You're not required to, but we'd love to see your face. And then if you could also click on the three dots in the upper right of your little window in Zoom and click rename, and then put your first name dash the country you're in and dash the role that you perform at your company or the thing that you focus on, your area of interest or specialization.
And it's easy to do. The little three dots by your mute button on your screen is how you can do it. I will mention too that we are recording the session, so if for any reason you don't feel comfortable showing your face, that's no problem. And we will share the recording of this afterwards. You'll get an email through Meetup.
All right. So I have a few people, Dimitro and Russell, if you want it. There you go, Russell. Good job. And Dimitro, if you can update your...
Yeah, it looks like we got a lot of people from US, but we got...
Sorry, where can I find the option to update my title?
Yeah, if you take a look on your screen, like if you look at your name right now, there's the ability to mute, and then right next to it on the right are those three dots. If you click on those three dots, then you can go in and you can say rename, and that's how you can do it. And if you can't...
Okay, maybe that's because I am...
I would say no big deal if you can't, no worries, but we obviously it's fun just to see where everybody's from.
Okay.
And it's great to meet you, Dimitro.
Okay. Oh, thanks. Thank you.
All right, well, I want to...
I cannot do this.
That's okay, Dimitro. Maybe
because I'm perhaps because I am using I am connected from my browser, not from the client. Maybe that's why.
It's no problem.
No worries. Mm-hmm. All right. So let's jump to the discussion. So please feel free just to ask your question. And if other people are talking and you have a question, go ahead and drop it in chat so you don't forget it, and then we'll pick those up in order. Raj, you're new, and you might have a question. Would you like to start us off?
Hey, Raj, work as a Java developer in Austin, Texas. So we started evaluating the for for our projects. So one of the challenges that I see is we have two different schema users, and in a change set, I have a changelog file in a change set. I want to use both the users, one user giving permission, giving the grant to the other user.
Hey, Raj, I'm sorry, you're breaking up a little bit. Could you get a little bit closer to your microphone? I think we're missing some of the context.
Okay. Try this. How is it now? Is it good?
Better. That's great.
That's much better.
Sorry. So sorry. Can I jump onto the question that I have, or you want anything from me?
Yeah, jump on your. Well, why don't you give us the context one more time, because I think we were getting bits and pieces, so we just want to make sure we heard the right question.
Okay. So we have two databases. I mean, each has its own user, and I'm trying to give grant access to one of the table from other user, so that I'm not able to give. But in the Liquibase properties, I can configure only one username, right? I cannot configure two. So how to address this kind of issues with the Liquibase? I have two different schemas, and one DB user, one schema user has to grant the other one.
What's your backend database?
Oracle.
Okay. So you have you're using Oracle. You have two different schemas in the database, and they need to have, and you basically have cross schema references.
Correct.
Okay. But you can't have the same user that has access to both databases. Is that the constraint?
Correct.
Okay. And so the question is, how do you use Liquibase to update each database, even though they have different user IDs?
Correct. So,
who wants to take that question?
I can take a stab at it a bit, although I don't know if I have a great answer to it. Partly, if you're looking to be able to kind of switch the connection that you use between change sets, where you run 3 change sets as one user, and then another change set as user B, and then go back to user A for a few more change sets, and then user B for some more change sets. That's not well supported in Liquibase so far. We have an open feature request for that we've been thinking about a bit off and on, just kind of how to be able to sort of configure that and manage that. We needing to kind of figure out a good way to do that. And so it's not made it up to the top so far yet. We do have a run with extension point that lets you be able to sort of from change set to change set, be able to swap out what you use to execute that change set, what you want to run it with. And so that extension point, if you are looking to do some Java coding, would allow you to sort of implement that sort of second connection that you're making with kind of whatever settings that you want. It's just that, yeah, so while that extension point would let you do it, we don't have real great out of the box support for it. So it would take a bit of Java coding, which I don't know if you're up for or not. You're able to sort of package it in your own jar file that you add to the Liquibase lib directory, and then it'll load it up. But it doesn't take modification of the Liquibase code to do it, but it would take sort of some programming to be able to handle that sort of secondary connection to go off to. Otherwise, I think, because we don't have that ability to swap connections within a change log, the best routes would usually be either to, sort of have a user that is able to work with both of the schemas, or have two separate runs for Liquibase, one that applies, one that runs as one user, one that runs as another user. If you need to sort of swap back to the first one, do that. I know that's more of a pain, but that's all I can think of. Anybody else have other ideas?
That was the one that jumped into my head first, Nathan, was if you have two schemas, they're different and they have different users that have access, that you could just have two change logs and then two properties files, and one would be targeted to one would be targeted to the other, and then you just run them serially in your automation, your build on your deployment automation.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. Actually, this will change from the release to release, and yeah, I got the answer. We were about to do that one, having two separate set of environments to run it differently. But the whole idea was give it to I'm not the one who's going to run in the production, so we thought of giving it to the DBAs to run on the production, but we need to give clear instructions for them, like how to do it. All right, thank you. Appreciate your answers. That's it.
I would have said the same thing. Is you either have a third user that has access to both to run it automatically, or you run it, and that's the case of you need to do interdependent China changes. Change 1 is one schema, change 2 is schema 2, change 3 is back to schema 1. If that's the order things have to run in, you have to have a third kind of service user that has access to both. If it's independent, then it's the simple way is two change logs and two users, like the team is saying.
So sometimes it's not just two, like it may be like 4 or 5 different databases need permission. So but I propose the idea, like have a single user which has the permissions to all the schemas. So that might be another solution. Yeah, thank you.
Yep. And I think also another thing you can do when you're talking to your other stakeholders is understand what they're trying to accomplish. So a lot of times in the lower level dev environments, security is not as critical because those are databases that are under the control of specific developers. So it's less critical, but as you get closer to production, having a lot more control over that becomes critical. And so just understanding what they're trying to accomplish and how they're doing it helps, because then it frames the problem a little bit better. And then if you still have questions, you can always reach out to us on the forum and provide us context as you're going through this process with your DBAs and other people. Ask us on there, and we'll be able to, between now and the next time we all meet, we'll be able to give you some feedback and insight as it evolves.
Sure, thank you.
You're very welcome. All right. Well, thank you for kicking us off, Raj. Who else has some things they'd like to talk about today? Dimitro, did you have something to cover?
Yes, I did have a couple of questions, but I am struggling to participate in the meeting using this web browser-based client because the sound is have many noises, and I see that my laptop is struggling running this client. But if you can hear me well, I could try asking a couple of questions that are definitely important for us.
Yes,
for the company.
We can hear you just fine. So yeah, I think go ahead and ask your question. And if we can't hear you, we'll definitely ask. Okay. So perhaps the most important couple of questions are regarding.
I think that one that I would need to start with is the question regarding placement of changes. And of change, the layout of change.
Change log. Hey, Dimitro, you as soon as you started describing the problem, your audio went really choppy, and so
okay,
now you're better.
That's Well, that's what I am experiencing. Just a minute. If I can, I could try reconnecting with the Zoom client instead of browser.
Okay, if you want to try that.
Okay,
Okay.
thank you. Because that was just a little bit unexpected for me. I just got the message and I realized that I didn't have the client. Okay.
All right. Well, we will be here.
Just a second.
We'll be here for 40 minutes, so we'll see you in a second. All right. Edward, welcome. How are you doing? Oh, your audio is still, I think you're still on mute.
Sorry.
No, there you are. Perfect. I was curious.
I just changed my microphone from my actual microphone, to my headphone. So.
Well, it's super easy to hear you, so that's fantastic. So thanks for doing that.
Yeah.
I was curious if you had a question or topic you'd like to cover today.
No, nothing specific. I was just reading the release note of the new version, but no question until now. I was trying the new init project subcommand. That was all I was doing this week with Liquibase.
Have you had a chance to play around with it very much yet?
No, not very much. Just try to see the interactive command line, or if you say just create the default, see the lot of options you have to configure the Liquibase.property file.
Yeah. But it's let us know on the forum what you think. I'd love to hear your feedback. I know Mario has a few more features that he's going to put into it over time, but the goal is to make it easy for new users to create new projects without having to know all the Liquibase stuff, and for existing projects to be able to create new properties files easily. So hopefully it helps.
Yeah, sure.
Excellent. Thanks. All right. Anybody who wants to be next?
I think Shiv Shankar, I hope I'm pronouncing your name correctly. I know you're new here with us today. Do you have any questions for us today?
Yeah, hi all. Thanks for the session. Actually, I am new to this, and I have started using the Liquibase, and I'm getting used to it. So I thought to join this. Yeah, it's great because it's doing deployment manually, but we started Liquibase. Yeah, thanks.
Well, if you end up having some specific questions you think of that you'd like help with, either today.
No, not, but yeah, definitely I'm exploring. So when definitely I will come up with in next session.
That sounds great. If you have any questions between now and the next time we meet, remember you can always go to forum.liquibase.org and you can post your questions there, and we'll see those in the meantime, so you don't have to wait for a month.
Sure. Thank you.
You're welcome. Sam, did you have anything for us today?
Okay. No, I don't have any questions. The one thing I was wondering about, when we're working in a context of like banks or healthcare, it's also very important to know where the data goes and so on in terms of confidentiality, but also they usually have restrictions for the region where the data can go. I was wondering when you use the Liquibase Hub, if there is an option that you can say my data has to stay in Europe or West Europe even, or what kind of data that is transmitted to the Liquibase Hub?
I'm going to let Mario answer that because I think he probably has a really complete answer to the question.
I have, yes, thanks. I have two answers. first one is you cannot segregate your data regionally. So that's a great idea. We actually have not come up with that. But you can decide which data you will send. So if you're familiar with Hub, then you might know the hub.mode option. So if you set that to off, it will send no data. If you set it to meta, it sends really just a kind of overall descriptive data, when it was done, who did it, what platform they used. It's the stuff when you look at an operation report that's just at the top. Only when you set it to all does it send the actual SQL or the log output. So if you're concerned about data like PII or DML that you're using, so personally identifiable information or actual like SQL change in and of itself in data, you can set that to off or set it to meta. And then one trick that we've definitely seen people doing is using environment variables, so that they, on different environments, they set that hub.mode. So in their dev environments or their test environments, it doesn't matter so much. But in prod, they might set it to meta.
All right, thank you.
All right.
That's a great use case, Mario. I hadn't thought about changing the mode depending on what the sensitivity of the environment is, since the rules do change. So that's really smart.
Yeah, there are people in the world who definitely do that, and so it's common practice.
Nice.
And I pasted in a chat a link to the documentation page that goes over what those settings are, and it lists out what each setting controls. So if you need to get back to it for any reason, you can check it out there.
Thanks, Pete.
Yeah, thank you.
Looks like we have Dimitro back.
Yes, exactly. Is it better now?
So far, so good.
Okay, great. So I tried fixing all the possible causes of the bad sound. I reconnected to different network, installed the client, and now I hope that I can ask my questions, maybe. Okay. So I think that all my questions are placed like around the same topic, but not exactly this topic. They are all related to the placement of changes in change sets. More precisely, that's how many changes we need to place in one change set, where in terms of performance and in terms of atomicity of change sets. So, so I'm not sure about whether this particular order of questions and priority of questions is correct, but first of all, in terms of performance, for example, that's not an example. That's the real case. We have a database that has more than 500 tables, and I experienced an issue trying to run the Liquibase commands update status or update SQL, and the issue I experienced this issue when trying to run these commands against the populated database. So when I have a changelog containing some 500 tables, and I first apply this changelog to an empty database, it applies without issues. Mm-hmm. And then when I run the subsequent update or status or update SQL command, in my case, in my setup, Liquibase ran for some 20 minutes, and then it says Java heap memory issue or something like this. So maybe I tried placing all the changes for creating all the 500 tables in one change set, and I tried placing one table per change. And perhaps I'm doing something not quite in a correct manner.
Okay, let me make sure we heard the question correctly, and then we'll let people give some answers. So you have a large database with 500 tables in it.
Yes.
You've created a change log that has the 500 create tables. You've created it two ways: one, all of the create tables in one change set, and one where there's create tables in separate change sets. And in both cases, it deploys to the target database fine if the target database is empty, brand new. But if it's an existing database, you're getting heap errors.
Yes.
Okay.
Exactly.
Okay. Perfect. And so, one quick question: what version of Liquibase are you currently using?
The good question. Not the latest one. Let me just check.
Okay.
That's 4.6.2.
Pretty recent, so that's pretty good.
Yes.
All right. So that's the problem statement.
Yes, that's the problem statement, and the
now
the question
what to do.
What to do? Yes, exactly.
Yes. I'll start with saying I think it sounds like a bug, probably. I don't think that behavior is what I would have expected, especially not a heap error. I'm basically going to ask Nathan at this point if he has any thoughts or if he needs more information to be able to dig in deeper.
Yeah, sure. And it'll probably be something that will be better to kind of continue on discussion on the forum when we're done here. But
Okay.
As a starting point anyway, and just kind of as a sort of general talking here too, you kind of asking on the sort of how many things to put in particular change sets.
Yes.
I don't think that putting your change sort of grouping the changes differently in different change sets is going to be impacting that memory usage. I'm guessing that's not where the problem is, and that's where I think kind of in follow up, if we could get some, we'll see what we can kind of come up with for being able to kind of better understand where the memory things are coming from. But the way that Liquibase should be handling, whether it's one change set in a change or one change in a change set, or whether there's a whole bunch of them, or how you're doing it, that I don't think should be impacting the memory that much. But sort of more importantly, your sort of meta question of how much should go in there. You generally want to have just one. Liquibase will try to run each change set as a transaction. And if it's not able to run that as a transaction, it's easy to get in some bad spots where like the first half of the change set runs and then it auto commits. Like if you do two create tables, the first change would run, it would create the first table. The second one might fail, but because most databases will auto commit that first table, then when you try running Liquibase again, it's going to be in a confused state because it can't rerun that first create table, even though Liquibase counts that whole change set as not running. So usually the best practice is just put one change per change set. There's edge cases there, like especially inserts and updates, where having multiple in the same one, you want to run it in the same transaction, and so that's fine. But the simplest answer is just have one per change set. And so so regardless of the memory thing, that's kind of the general direction you want to go, is just one change per change set. Why you're hitting the heap memory problem with that, it's the fact that it runs against an empty database but not a populated database makes me feel like it has to do with, we will do some snapshot of the database logic when we run an update. It shouldn't be a lot, because we should just be looking for things like, we're looking for, does the database changelog table exist, and does the changelog lock table exist? And if not, we need to create it. So we'll do some of those sort of things. but those should generally be pretty lightweight and not be causing memory issues. Do you have any preconditions or anything else in there that may be causing us to do more of a snapshot, sort of looking at the data?
Well, I'm not sure. I don't know. I tried different configurations. Like I have already said that I tried putting different amounts of change set per change per change set, and I tried running on different machines. Tried running changing the Java virtual machine options, and I thought that I am certainly doing something not quite correctly. I need to change something. And okay, if there is no easy answer and no quick and easy answer, that's okay. And regarding the atomicity of changes, that's what you just explained. That was my second question. So how to deal with atomicity of changes for the databases that do not where DDL is not transactional. I believe that's the major part of the databases. Like Oracle is one of the databases that are relevant for us. We use PostgreSQL and Oracle. PostgreSQL has transactional support for DDL, right? And Oracle doesn't. So that's exactly the issue I would like to address, if possible. How could we deal with cases of partially applied change set when we when a part of SQL statement generated by the change this contained in the change set execute, and then suddenly there is an exception, and we have a situation where the change set application is not recorded in the Liquibase tables, and at the same time we have some of the changes applied, and we cannot reapply the change set, and we cannot roll back it like this. What are the best practices of dealing with situations like this? Packing one change, always packing one change per change set for Oracle.
Yeah.
Yes,
I think you're right. I think that was Nathan's guidance ended up being Nathan's guidance on the previous question. It was kind of embedded in the answer, but to maintain automaticity for all databases, given that different databases behave differently, that there's really not transactions in Oracle. A DDL statement, a submitted DDL statement is the transaction. It auto commits every DDL statement, where that's not the case in Postgres. That's very true. And so typically what we advise people to do is keep it simple and just do one DDL statement per change set. So really one change per change set. And then it works regardless of what database you're applying your database changes to. And that's usually the best and easiest way to move forward. If you do have, so I guess the question back to you is really, do you have situations where that just general heuristic doesn't apply or doesn't satisfy everything that you're trying to accomplish? Or do you have situations where you need to have multiple DDL statements in a change set?
I think we can use this approach. We can use one change per it. Perhaps sometimes it would be nice to have, but if you cannot maintain compatibility with all the databases we use, that's totally okay for us.
Okay,
so that's the solution. Thank you very much.
You're very welcome. And I would just say, Dimitro, I would love to get a little bit deeper with you on the issue you're seeing right now with the large number of tables. So if you want to put, I don't know if you feel comfortable posting your question publicly in the forum, but if you do,
of course.
Yeah, if you want to do that, then we can jump on that and look at it in more detail. It sounds like an interesting problem to solve, so we'd like to help you solve it.
Sure.
Okay. Any other things that have been on your mind you're thinking about in the context of Liquibase?
Another thing, I'm not sure that's it's in the scope of this conversation. I'm interested in the support of a feature called domains that is supported by some databases. In particular, that's supported by Postgres, and also I believe Interbase, Firebird, and Sybase. But the one that we are interested in is Postgres. So we have a case that is that having in this case would be it would be nice to have the domain support for us. Why? We have our data type definitions written separately in one file, and it would be nice to have one-to-one mapping of our data type definitions from our file in form of domain definitions for the database. Otherwise, we would need to translate, to look up our type definitions in our file and translate them to SQL definitions. Like, this type means that this is character variant 300 and or character variant 3 and the set of possible values like this, and it is not null and something like this. And we need to repeat this definition for every table, every column where it's used. While it would be much more comfortable for us to define this data type as SQL domain and then just refer to this type by name. Well, so I found an extension to Liquibase, third-party extension, that should support somehow this create domain statement. But it didn't work for me, and I think that it may be abandoned, and it supported only Sybase, I believe. So the question is whether there is some solution, or maybe there is some plans to implement this domain support in Liquibase.
Let me, great question. Let me ask you a couple of follow-up questions just to make sure we understand it. For the create domain statement, is that part of, is that a standalone statement that you would specify in the database, or is that part of a create table or some other type of statement?
No, that's a standalone statement.
Okay. So there is a path with Liquibase where you can specify any arbitrary SQL statement that you want. It's not part of, it wouldn't be defined in the object model, but you can include inline SQL or external files as a type of change set in Liquibase. So if you have things that fall outside of what's just currently supported with Liquibase, that can be your first plan of attack, is to use those, just use real generic, just use direct SQL in your change logs where needed. The second thing is if that's not sophisticated enough, or if there's functionality that you need more specific to that, and you want to have a new change type, there is a way to extend Liquibase to do that. And so we could talk. What we could do is we could help you understand how to add those things in, and if that's something, a lot of times customers or users, community users of Liquibase will do that. They'll find areas that they want to do something that can't be supported by the current mechanisms, and they'll add that part, they'll code that part, add that part, and we'll bring that into Liquibase, so you don't have to maintain it anymore. But then you can solve your problem and then make sure it's there moving forward in the core Liquibase.
Oh, okay. And the question: if we specify our custom SQL statement for creating domains, in this case, do we need to specify? I believe we do need. We need to specify two SQL statements, in fact. One for for applying the change and another for rolling back the change. Like one create domain and then drop domain.
Yes,
both of them. Oh, okay.
that is correct.
Okay, that's a nice solution. Thank you.
You're very welcome.
I think one way to just sort of think about it in general is in the end, Liquibase is just running the SQL that you give us. And we do have that raw SQL that lets you always be able to fall back to anything you can do in the database with SQL, you can track and manage with Liquibase. We have those sort of object model or, whatever the good name for it is, the sort of predefined types like create table and drop table that you can do as an XML tag. And those, I like to think of them as a helper function on top of the SQL that lets that lets you sort of describe the SQL that you would want, and then we'll come up with the specific SQL for you. But we're also not trying to replace SQL with that. We're trying to just sort of augment, helper that SQL, and so you can always fall back to that low level SQL for anything that you need to do against the database.
Okay, thanks.
Hi, I have one question. Maybe I'm not sure whether this is a valid question or not. So consider a scenario where we are running the Liquibase through the Java API code, right? And during that particular run, I wanted to know that what are the change set has been executed without looking into the table, database change log table, right? Through the API itself, is there any way to get the change details which are executed? Because right now I'm trying to develop one feature where it will send the email what are the change set has deployed in that particular run. So right now how I'm dealing with this problem is that before Liquibase update, I am taking the change set list which is not run. I'm having that list, and after executing it, again I'm taking the list which is not executed, and I'm removing the which are not executed, and I'm sending that list of change set to the for sending the email. So right now I'm not able to find is there any inbuilt function or method in the Liquibase. So I'm a little bit dealing with myself. Yeah.
It's all good. That's actually a really good question. So there are two commands that there are two status related commands that give you insight into what is either needs to be deployed or what has been deployed. The Liquibase status -- verbose command will give you a list of things that have not yet been deployed. But the Liquibase history command will tell you for any given target database what is currently deployed in that target database, and that might be a better choice. So if you could, it's similar to what you said. You would basically run the Liquibase history command before you do the deploy, and then you'd run the Liquibase history command after you do the deploy. And any new records that are in the second list are the new things that have been deployed.
Okay, but for that particular run, is there anything inbuilt list where this set of change set has successfully deployed? That is right now Liquibase is not maintaining, right?
I think I put a reference to the class in the chat, but especially since you're using the Java API more directly, there is a change exec listener that you're able to attach in. Where you plug that in may depend on sort of how you're calling the Liquibase APIs, but if you kind of do some fine usages on that, that class lets you be able to kind of create an implementation of that has callbacks on this thing's going to be executed, and then this change set was executed, this change set was executed. And so if you're wanting to be able to sort of listen as things run just kind of as part of the regular process, that change exec listener class may be what you're looking to implement.
Okay.
And Nathan, are the Java docs are out on the doc site or .org?
Yes, yes, they are. I'll put a link to it.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you. Great questions. All right.
Charles, is there anything that you needed?
Good morning.
From me. Hey, how are you, Charles? Good to see you.
Yeah, good to see everybody. It's been a couple of months. I've been a little bit on the busy side. I did have one question for my developers, and I kind of know the answer to this, and they're just wanting to know if there's a best practice wrapped around it, where we're starting to do CI with MSSQL stored procedures. I have the SQL I'm calling right now to check if the object exists in syst objects and dropping the procedure. So that way they can continue to do the create on the first iteration while they're still doing CI, so they're not having to go in and manually drop it before they do the check into GitHub. The question came up from them was, once we get this successfully deployed all the way to production, do we remove that SQL that's checking for the object and change from create to replace in the stored procedure? And because to them, that's actually making another change into production, or is it best practice just to leave the SQL check there and do the drop and then have the create at all times?
Let me make sure I have the question correct.
Mm-hmm.
So you have create or replace. You want to really have
Oracle. Yeah.
You really want. And so you're working. You're basically, you've implemented a create or replace logic for your stored logic, and the question is it okay to leave? I mean, if the logic is such that it really is create or replace, so that you're detecting whether it's a create or replace. I'll just say that I believe that it makes sense that if that works in all environments, that works whether you're level all the way to production. And once something's been deployed by Liquibase, it's not going to be deployed again, right? Unless you roll it back specifically. Right. If you do roll it back, that logic should still continue to work. So my belief is that should be fine. I do have one question though. Typically people who work with stored logic, there's kind of two different ways to work with stored logic. One is that you create a new change set for every time you change a piece of stored logic, you create a new change set and then deploy that out. Another way of working with it is to use Liquibase in a mode that detects whether or not the stored logic that's in a change set changes, and if it does, then deploy the changed one. And so I'm curious, what of those two workflows are y'all currently using?
Right now for our CI process, there is we're using just one at this point, for being able to make sure that we can push everything out. And then the CD process is one change per story that we're working on with an agile perspective. So the question was more of how do we keep our CI processes in line, and then how do we keep moving forward, because we have developers who are new coming into this and going, well, why is it different to do it within CI versus CD, or why is there differences in when I make this change here versus here? So I've got some education I still have to do with the team to make sure everybody is up to date on how to do things the most efficient way. But that was one of the questions that did come up was, if I have it set to run on change, then the actual SQL statement, does that work every single time because one of the SQL files I'm loading right afterwards changes? Or do I have to have it run always, so that way the drop works and then the SQL file is built every time?
Yeah, this is probably going to be a deeper conversation than we can cover in 10 minutes, but let's see if we can do it. And I'm going to let other people talk too, because it's been a while since I've been out in the field. But the last time I was out and we were talking about these different workflows, what a lot of people would do is have their stored logic as a separate change log that acted a certain way, and you would have, and those would always get applied first. And then you would have your regular change log that you would run that would have whatever DDL and DML changes and everything. And that usually worked out fine, because there's not a lot of dependencies. It's the dependencies between stored logic and your DDL get resolved after everything's deployed the first time they compile, and that happens. You can make that happen at the very end of your deployment after both have been deployed. So you end up. I haven't run into a situation where you've run into dependency issues, and keeping them separate so that they act differently. One's very much a create or replace kind of run on change, and the other is more standard, has worked in the past. But I'd love to open it up to the rest of the people. I know Mike spends a lot of time out in the real world. Nathan probably spends some time out in the real world, and see if we can get some other insights if that might be different than my point of view.
One of the things to kind of consider as well as the run on change is the order, because your change log has change 1, change 2, change 3. And if you do run on change and the expected, so you do it the first time, it's fine. The second time you run, you may have a dependent change, which is later in the change log. And if it's run on change, it may run before as part of that run on change, because it's changed and it's looking sequentially in the change log for changes. So that may be something to think about, as long as there's no changes afterward as you're running your update. The third piece is, version 1, version 2, version 3, as you do your change sets, this way you know which one is the latest one, so to speak, in your change log too. So that's a third kind of thing to consider as part of that. Now, even on your, you can always run create or replace, so to speak, even the first time, because it's a create or replace. So that may be, instead of you putting your own drops in there, you can. And if that's working, back to Kevin's point, if it's working, great, don't change it. You've already got something working, why change how you're doing it today? But the other thing to consider is create or replace works with stored logic on purpose. So it's just replacing what was there, so you don't necessarily have to do the run on change, so to speak.
That last statement, Mike, for create or replace, are you saying that the current stored logic commands support automatic create or replace without having to do anything specific with the stored logic, or is that not correct?
For most of the databases, there are some subtleties in how create or replace works with permissions. So there are some databases that is not a true replace. It does a drop and then a replacement, or a new create, which potentially loses access privileges that you had before. And other databases are a true replacement. So it looks at it as a replacement. So depending on the database we're talking about, there's some subtleties there.
Microsoft SQL Server.
Yeah, and that's one where if you're using the create procedure tag around the procedure that you have in there, there is a tag for replace if exists equals true, where Liquibase should boilerplate in that if this procedure exists, drop it first. That gets generated silently for you, so you don't need to put that in there. So that may make it a little bit easier that way for you.
Thank you. Yes.
We did it in 5 minutes, so that's good. Good job, everybody. Charles, if you're out there and you're still talking to your developers and you have questions, my ask is that you go to the forum and ask the question there. And if we need to do some back and forth as you're uncovering things or you're working through use cases, feel free to do that. We'll jump on and have
definitely. Thank you.
All right, Caroline.
Okay. Thanks for everybody's questions. That's awesome. I just wanted to go through some community updates. As always, we have our recap blog every month, but this month we did a whole year-end recap. I'm going to let Mario talk a little bit about our most recent release. I know it got brought up very briefly earlier, so I'll let him talk a little bit more about that.
Sure, I'll be quick. 4.7.0 came out a few days ago. It has a lot of things in it, but the two of the most exciting are init project and init start H2. So these are a little walkthrough wizard. You can accept all of the defaults and it'll do everything for you, or you can customize it if you have the specific names and formats that you want to use. What it does is it just sets up a Liquibase project. This is especially handy if you're new. Sets up a Liquibase project that is good to go. Init start H2 will start up the H2 database we ship with. So as you're doing tests or proofs of concept and you don't want to try this on your existing database because you don't want to potentially mess things up, you could use the little built-in H2. And then just one more sentence of context. This is part of an overall flow. We're doing a number of init subcommands that will help you get set up with Hub, help you get set up with new projects, help you get set up with Pro Keys, all sorts of things. So yeah, give 4.7 a run. And if you have issues or you have thoughts and ideas, send them our way on the forum or just in an email.
Awesome. Thanks, Mario. Yeah, as always, if you have questions, feel free to post them in the forum. I wanted to just highlight real quick some of our top developers. These are people that are part of our Liquibase Legends program. If you're not yet part of the Liquibase Legends program, I highly encourage you to sign up. We'll send a link out with the email following this meeting. But I just wanted to point out Alex, Florin, and Andres. They are big people when working on our extensions, specifically with Cosmos DB, MongoDB. You can always thank them for that. For Alex specifically, and then Florence, a big Neo4j guy, and he works on that extension, and then Andreas is the same deal with Percona. So if you ever come across them, they do hop into our meetups. Be sure to thank them, especially if you're big fans of those databases. And then also our top supporters. So I know Kevin talked a little bit about the forum. Anytime you go in and you participate in the forum, whether you ask questions or you even help answer questions, you do get points towards Liquibase Legends. Same thing with Stack Overflow. If you're more of a Stack Overflow person and you have a big rank there, you can still participate in the Liquibase community there, and you'll get points for that too. So just wanted to give a shout out. Daryl was on here earlier. He had to hop, but he's one of our top supporters and a fellow Liquibase legend. And then, as always, we're looking for a developer advocate. Kevin, I don't know if you want to give a couple cents on this.
Sure. Thanks, Caroline. If you obviously everyone on here knows Liquibase, knows it well, or is learning Liquibase, and those are the people we're looking for. We're looking for power users that want to join us and join our team and help other people in the Liquibase community learn about and use Liquibase even better. So if that's something that sounds interesting to you, reach out to me, kevin@liquibase.com, and I'd love to talk to you further.
Awesome. And also we have other job openings at Liquibase too, other than the developer advocate role. So feel free to take a look at our careers page. If you want to come hang out with us more than just at these meetups, then that's your opportunity. But I wanted to talk about next month. So we're kind of changing up our ritual for the meetups, right? And every quarter is when we'll do kind of an office hours, ask me anything like we did today. We won't be doing that until next quarter, but next month and kind of every quarter consecutively after that, we'll have a product kind of community roadmap meeting. Next month is going to be led by Karen Taggart, who is awesome. She wished she could be here today with us, but she's in some training. But we want to know, what are some new features you'd like to see? How can we improve functionality? What are some things that you think should be addressed? We want to hear it. And so if you have ideas, we do have a forum topic that we will add as a banner post in the forum after this meetup is over. Feel free to hop in there and RSVP in the meetup group. I've already launched the page, so you can already jump in there. But that is all from me today. I know that we are at time. And so I want to thank everybody for joining us, and thanks for your questions. And as always, if you have more questions, feel free to post in our forum. That's the best way to get in touch with us. So.
Great. Thank you, Caroline, and thank you everybody for joining us.
Yeah, thanks, Kevin. We appreciate it.
Right.
Have a great day. Take care. Bye.